Welcome to the Effects Loop. I'm Scott, and we're keeping you in the loop of the guitar community. This week is brought to you by Electromotive Sound Company and Patreons like the beautiful, beautiful people that support this podcast. If you want to check out Electromotive Sound Company, you can definitely check out their Reverb shop. Is anything actually in stock right now? He's always building stuff to suit. Ben makes some great pedals. I know both Ian and I use them. I have 3 of them now. I have his Klon. You have his Klon.
Yeah, I have his Klon V2. It's the one that separates the clean blend from the dry.
Yeah.
Normally Klons have it's an inverse dual concentric kind of thing where it controls both the mix between the channels as well as how much gain is going on, all just with one knob.
Nice.
Yeah. His separates that and allows us to tweak some. He blew me away. This is the first pedal that I got from him. The documentation is incredible. He socketed some parts and included some extra diodes and stuff to swap things out and customize it to taste. And honestly, Ben blew me away. So definitely check out some of his stuff, see what he's got.
So if you want to get blown by Ben, check out Electromotive Sound Company.
Yeah, that is a promise.
All right, Ian, it's been 2 weeks since we've seen you?
Yeah,
3 weeks?
I think so. Yeah.
What's new?
What is new? I finally got a chance to test drive that new Nordland pedal that I talked about last time live, and I gotta say, it is just my new favorite thing, especially in combination with Ben's Klon V2. They play really well together, and so I don't know, maybe just that. Honestly, I haven't gotten to play out in a while, and when I say that, I'm a church player really, so that's mainly what I mean. But I count it, and it felt great.
It sounded good as someone who was sitting in the house and hearing it. Yeah,
that speaks volumes. Scott's been a good year, so I'm gonna take that one as a win.
Yeah, I mean, I often tease Ian. So people that need the backstory here is Ian's been like just added to the show randomly here and there. Ian and I are friends. He's up in Chicago with me. We play at the same church.
Yeah.
And that's how we met each other and became friends. Like at the old church we used to play at, and now we both play at the same church. So there's always a goofy camaraderie between the two of us. We invent conflict, even though we don't need it.
Well, I think, my first experience meeting Scott was me trying not to drool over his pedals and ruin them. He's using a quad Cortex now, which is, again, like, you're always one step ahead of everybody else, I think. But at the same time, I think we can agree that there's a lot of people that have boards like yours that just do it because they can. You've actually got a really great ear, and you always, sound good. So,
thank you.
You've got the latest and greatest, but the things that you're doing with those are really musical and intentional. So, but yeah, I mean, I remember, I think that's how we met, was like me checking out your board and playing your CE 24, and now I've got a CE 24, and
Yeah. So the other joke is Ian and I's pedal boards slowly are becoming the same. So
I talked you into the Volante. It didn't really take much convincing. So.
No, it did not. But well, I guess on my side for what's new, I got a bunch of new stuff in, but none of it's staying.
True.
So I jumped on a package deal.
Yeah, we're both kind of in a selling kick, like a reverb.
Oh yeah, I'm selling your stuff for you because you can't handle reverb. So
yeah,
between your stuff and my stuff, I think there's like 20 pedals listed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I just don't have the patience to should say this? I'm eager to move my stuff. When I make the decision to sell it, I want it gone. And that's not always in my best interest because I don't necessarily get the full value of what they're worth. I just, if someone lowballs me, I'm very inclined to take it just out of convenience. So I think we're both better off. I'd let you take a little bit of the cut anyway, because if I had sold it myself, I probably would have accepted a lower offer. You've got a great reverb track record, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of all my flips at this point are basically that is like when someone comes with I'm selling everything.
Yeah.
Or I'm selling a lot of stuff all at once. I just want it gone. And often those kind of people go to stores and stuff like that, and they get really lowballed by stores because stores have a pricing model. Usually they'll give you like 50 to 60% of what they're going to sell it for. So you don't get market value when you trade in at like a store or whatever, and unless like the discount that you can turn around. Like I think is it Guitar Center does if you trade in you get 10% off.
Maybe something like that, but they always kept only like 60% of the pedal's value.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a period of time where people were like trading in cheap pedals and then going and buying a Paul Reed Smith. So you get like that 10% off suddenly pays for itself. Like there's people who play the system like that, but anyway, so usually to people like that, I'm like, all right, well, they're going to offer you this. Feel free to go get another offer, but I'll give you X amount more. I still have to flip it and make money, and I'm taking risk here, and so here's what I think I can do. And once in a while someone takes it, and great. So I did that to somebody, and I got a Strymon Iridium, a Maris Mercury 7, and a Source Audio Nemesis. So someone clearly I think someone just bought an HX Stomp. That's really what that says to me.
Would highly recommend it to somebody. Well, really anybody. Honestly, there's no reason not to have one these days.
Yeah. So anyway, I got that. I'm going to sell them at some point, and I bought them at a point that I can try them and then move them, and I won't lose any money, and I might make a little bit here, but not a lot. But it was a safe.
This thing too, you can capture the Iridium if you want in your QC, all that kind of,
Yeah, I'm generally clear. So I've never tried the Iridium. Like you had one.
Yeah.
But
I really liked it. But the thing is so I've had a Stomp on my board for a while. It's just sort of generally a catch-all. And this was before the update to like the 3.0 software. For a while, you can only have like up to 6 effects running at a time, and it sounds like a lot unless you're a worship guitar player. And eventually, they added a couple extra blocks around the same time that a power supply of mine was dying on me and was having a hard time supplying both the Stomp and the Iridium. And so I had the extra blocks, and I was like, you know what? I'll try some of the new amps that they had in the Helix and everything. Long story short, I got to a point where the extra space on the board for a new pedal was more valuable to me, and I was able to compromise and get some pretty good sounds out of the Stomp. But I really did love the Iridium. I'm a big fan. This is mainly why I don't have like an all-in-one digital rig right now, because I'm still a really big fan of intuitive pedals that just like sound good at almost any setting, and I can tweak, on the fly. And the Iridium was that. You just turn it on and it sounds great. And it's got all sorts of options. You can load your own IRs and stuff, but it just worked for me, and it worked well. And so I had a really great experience with it. I sold it because my bases were covered. It was a bit redundant at that point, and it left some space for some other stuff. But for anybody looking for, a really easy direct amp option, I would really recommend it.
Yeah, so I'll try it out. I mean, I doubt I'm going to like it more than like QC, yeah. So we'll see.
I was at a place when I got the Iridium, actually, it replaced my Kemper Stage, which I don't know how many gasps were just uttered. But with the Kemper, I found, again, I still really love physical pedals, and I had a hard time getting rid of the ones that I love. And so I wanted to be able to have a board and the cover stage, which was just way too much. It was way too much to be carrying around all, at once. And so, yeah, honestly, the Iridium did the trick. It was good enough for me that, and had way less things that I needed to tweak to get a good sound. Just plug and play. It worked really well. The other thing too that's really nice about the Iridium is that it is a full model of each of the amps that it's got. So as you tweak the the EQ knobs and all that stuff, it is modeling exactly what the EQ knobs do in the individual amps and all that, which the Kemper doesn't do.
No, I mean, all capture technology is like it's a snapshot of what's going on, and then there's an EQ on top of it, but it's not a. It's like a studio.
It's a generic EQ, right? Exactly.
It's like having an EQ rack after or before your in outs. It's not. So it's like if you're used to mixing on a console, that's what it's like. But it's not like tweaking the knobs on an amp. Like that's just not modeled.
Yeah. So I found it to be intuitive and plug and play, and it's teeny, and is not the size of a Kemper stage, and so at the time it made perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, shall we dive into some news? Okay. Interesting. Winter NAMM was canceled, yet everyone's kind of doing their winter NAMM releases right now, or at least some major ones are. We're going to see a few from a few different brands where they're doing full rig or full line release announcements, which is kind of funny because, I think, at least from the guitar market, I think winter NAMM moving to summer is not going to delay all these big releases. I think we're going to see over the next week or two some more of these because it's still the fiscal year,
right?
Or I don't know when anybody declares their fiscal year, but generally January is where everyone makes all the announcements and they hit the stores in the spring, and then summer NAMM is usually kind of here's what's coming out for Christmas ish. So
yeah, I'll be interested to see how the brands kind of handle this year. I wonder if anybody's going to be holding some of their stuff back to release at summer NAMM, or if they'll still just treat summer, as it's always kind of been treated.
I mean, in some ways, look, the coronavirus has not necessarily sped up production in a lot of areas. There's a lot of delays on a lot of things, so I could see where having a 18-month cycle now instead of a 12-month cycle, let more development kind of happen, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's interesting to me too is, we see like the development cycle with big companies like Apple is very consistent. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily see that in the guitar community, and I say that in a good way. I think that
guitars, it is, particularly the musical instrument side. This is
instrument side, sure,
totally. But the boutique
Fender follows that. But yeah, exactly.
The boutique pedal market is generally we release it when we can release it.
Yes, which I really like because there's no need to rush to put something out before it's ready.
Yeah, or sometimes what you'll see at NAMM releases is sometimes a prototype, like Summer NAMM particularly. I've seen some prototypes where you don't actually see the real thing until like a year or 2 or 3 years later. Like
Quad Cortex has been a pretty big example of that.
Yeah, they were at what, NAMM 2019?
It was a while ago.
You've got, I remember Old Blood Noise Endeavors showed up with their white cap at Summer NAMM in like 18, and it came out last year. So, and they re-engineered the whole thing. They showed up with a prototype, and it wasn't what they wanted to do, and they changed it. So you never know. But speaking of boutique pedal companies, Walrus Audio has previously come out with this, but they've officially announced it to their main line, which is the Slowdfa. How do you think you pronounce that? Because the SLO is slow with the 2 dots.
Yeah, so, maybe Slowdfa.
Slowdfa?
Like that,
which is a updated model of their slow multi-textured reverb. Add some new tweaks as well as add some presets, which is pretty cool. They released something similar, they released something under this name when they did their National Park series. If you remember those for, that was Black Friday. They always do their special art for Black Friday, so they did in the National Park Series. So this came out then, or they came out with one then, but now it looks like has come out to their core line, coming in at $229. So similar in price to where a lot of Walrus pedals sit at right now.
Yeah.
Does this interest you any more than the old Slow, or are you just kind of, eh?
Well, I'll tell you, I think, if you already have a Slow, well, I've got an interesting perspective playing in the worship scene. The main thing that is keeping this off my wish list is the lack of stereo. Honestly, other than that, I know you can get some really fantastic sounds out of this. So if you're running a mono rig, like the Slow has always been a really great pedal. This with the preset options and all that stuff makes a ton of sense. It's definitely a step in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest. Until this thing can do stereo, I'm not going to really give it a second glance.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing because they did do the Juliana, so they came out with a separate stereo version of a mono pedal. They already have. Yep.
I was expecting to see that with this. I was really excited to see Slavana or not Slavana, Slava. But yeah, no mention of stereo. No, that being said, maybe this article just missed that, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part is, I don't know if you watched the used market, but I think the Slow has kind of run its course.
Sure.
Or was in its initial hype. Used prices have sank pretty good on that compared to like a lot of the rest of the market. So we'll see where that winds up, but it's Walrus. It's going to be good. Walrus has not done a bad pedal in memory in a long time. So
no, that's very true. I'd say maybe even like for like a synth or something for mono synth or something like this, that it really is genuinely impressive how massive of a sound you can get out of this for just a mono pedal.
Well, I mean, you got to also remember, you and I run direct at a church that allows us to run stereo.
That's true. But if you're just running this into an amp, like a single amp, or
most people run a mono rig. It's stereo because most people who use amps, that means that a second amp needs to be brought.
Yes.
That drastically changes the dynamic.
Absolutely.
You've seen how much I cuss and moan when I'm
worth looking at.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, just with my use case, unfortunately, it just sort of doesn't make the cut. And I wish it did because this thing does sound fantastic. But, I'm creating a lot of really great stereo imagery before my reverb that would get lost with this. So,
yeah. Well, maybe this might make the cut. Orange Amplification came out with the Guitar Butler, a guitar-focused version of the Bass Butler, featuring a 2-channel preamp and a versatile set of I/O.
Dude,
it's
fantastic.
Now you have your attention?
Absolutely. I think it's amazing. I love the amp-in-the-box stuff. And like it being a preamp, obviously, like you can use it for any number of situations. You can use it as its own drive pedal, or you can use it as an amp simulation if you're running like some sort of cab sim afterwards.
Mm-hmm. It's got balanced XLR out with a ground lift switch, so you can just run direct if you need to. Does it have a cab sim in it?
I didn't catch one.
No.
But I think that's okay because, to be honest, it seems to be an all analog preamp,
Yeah.
And the cab sim stuff is digital, and this kind of thing. Analog tech it doesn't.
Oh, there are analog cab sims.
Well, okay,
like the Tech 21 Zanzam stuff was all had cab sims on it. That was analog.
That's true, but
so
I don't know necessarily
that's been a thing for a long time.
That's true. But yeah, this isn't going to age out on you, and so I think it's probably the move to keep that out of it. This is going to be great on any board, and yeah, you can run plugins after the fact. Even if you're at a church or something, if you're running it at a church with like a Pro Tools rig or something, you can toss the cab sim on at the end and just use the XLR outs. It just, it makes a lot of sense. And recording into an interface, the same way. You can change your cabs afterwards and use the preamp, set up just how you like it every time.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the rub I have with it.
Mm.
It's $430.
Yeah. Okay.
And not to say, hey, this thing's not worth $430 or preamp pedals are not worth $430. I mean, you have the Victory stuff all comes in more expensive than that. The Milkman stuff all comes in more expensive than that. Like there's precedent for more expensive versions of this. But
and what's interesting too is obviously this is bridging in. I don't know that this conversation is had very often because we really just put these in pedal categories from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is I mean, this more than most is a lot closer to an actual amplifier. And so if you're looking at it as an amp head, that price point isn't too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, so let's walk that back a little bit more. So last year, 2 years ago, Orange came out with the Terror Stamp, which was the Terror box in a pedal form. So it actually had a power amp in it. This does not have a power amp in it.
Good point. Yeah, you're not driving a speaker with this.
Yeah. So I'm just not sure about where this sits in the market and does this make sense? Because at the same time, you're also when you're in the $400 or $500 range. I know it's kind of a gimmick, but there's guys who are putting out things with tubes in it. Like they're putting out two preamps in a pedal form.
True.
Not too far away from this price point. So it is one of those things of like, I just don't know.
Well, I guess we'll just have to see more demos, honestly. Maybe this is just a me thing. I think, when it comes to amps, Orange does something just different. An Orange when you hear it. And so if it's got the sound, you might not be able to get that sound out of some of these other, products, even with tubes in it. So, yeah, I mean, we'll really just have to see. I think Orange is a little bit more of a niche brand anyway. Not that it should be, because, I mean, you can get everything from clean to dirty out of Orange. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll just have to see what the demos are like.
Yeah. So moving on, Spaceman Effects has relaunched the Explorer, the 6-stage phaser, in a more compact enclosure. Ian, have you bought into the Spaceman hype? Are you even aware of this brand?
Peripherally.
So historically, Spaceman is just ridiculously. They are always out of stock. They're always hard to get into. They have a great cult following. So, seeing some of these pedals come out now, this is a phaser that's coming in at $279. So it is not entry level by any means.
Right.
But people who like specific phasers would really probably be just going after this like crazy. I mean, I bet you this is already sold out.
Yeah, I get it. And in fact, like phaser, like, I don't spend a lot of time with that kind of stuff. If I'm tossing a phaser on something, it's probably inside Logic after the fact, just as a let's try it kind of thing. I'm not a phaser guy, but I also have tried enough phasers to know that if I were to be a phaser guy, I'd spend a lot of money on it because they really can't. It's a nuanced thing.
It's a deep rabbit hole you can go down.
Oh, yeah. And so I have a lot of respect for it, but I just, yeah, I don't know.
Well, so what's pretty cool about this guy is it can run from anywhere from 9 volts to 24 volts, which I guarantee, since this is an analog phaser, you're going to experience the changes that does.
Yeah.
There's a CV and expression pedal input, so I'm hoping you can mess with ramps and things like that. There's
that would be sweet.
6 different shapes, waveform shapes you can mess with, which always makes these things really cool. So, I mean, when we start looking at the feature packing on this thing, I mean, that is where
what it
the
reminds
cost
me
starts
of?
getting really justified. What was it
This
remind
reminds me of? This is like, this makes me think of the Origin Cali 76, something like that.
Is it
where
the Jewel
you're
Light?
packing, I think it's a combination of everything. The Jewel Light definitely is, but even just all of those controls in such a small form factor while still staying analog is really impressive.
Yeah, this will be pretty cool. I mean, again, I guarantee this thing is sold out already. But if it's not, and hopefully they do a long production run of it, actually still in stock. I stand corrected. So, or at least so it also comes in silver, red, and black. So there's a few different color options that you can choose in here.
That black looks pretty sweet.
Yeah. And the other thing I like is this is one of my like pedantic things, but when you put side jacks on something, you put the power on the side too.
Yes. Don't
put it on the top.
Yep.
Other brands do that. It drives me insane because it's like, well, just do one or the other. Like if I gotta put bulk on left and right side, just make sure the height's not too bad. If it's all top mounted, don't put a side jack on it. You know, those kind of things. So,
although to be honest, can we just? It's 2022. Why don't we just all have top jacks?
I still got room in the world for side jacks, man.
I'll take it on mini pedals. I know that there's really not a way to get around it there.
But yeah, when the pedal gets big, which I mean, Spaceman effects are not the smallest single size enclosures. They tend to be a little bigger. So, actually, speaking maybe of a bigger enclosure, Source Audio comes out with I'm going to say this is ZIO.
I am so pumped about this thing.
Which is a analog front end and boost with 4 different preamp circuits in one box and a 20 dB range of boost. Now, the 20 dB range of boost is kind of like a lot of them do that range, but I'll let you get into a little bit more of why the preamp side is so interesting and fun.
You know, the preamp, having the options basically to choose. Playing a preamp pedal is really all about feel, if you ask me. And having the 4 different options to control how you want something to feel going into your other pedals. Like, I generally like to put a boost up front before my drives. And so the first thing, generally that's interacting with my guitar signal is something like this or a compressor. And so being able to control the feel up front is really critical. And you can get a lot of different... you can attest to this. I mean, the feel of something will change how you play.
Oh, yeah.
So even just from a creativity standpoint, it'll drive you in new directions. If you're recording and something's getting stale, try a different circuit. It'll feel a little different. You do something different with it. It's great. And then the EQ selections on this stuff, too, are awesome. I love the fact that it's simple, to be honest. There's 2 knobs on this, the circuit knob and the output knob. The tone options are on a 3-way toggle. And then you can select what the switch does, whether it bypasses or it mutes. And I kind of really love that simplicity too, because if I'm using a preamp pedal up front, I mean, chances are I'm not doing much. I don't want too much tonal shaping. It's not like I'm doing anything drastic. And so, talking about, coming from a guy who likes the simple pedals, this just seems really cool. It makes me sort of think of what are those, like the Sweet boost pedal out of, what is
that? Who did that?
Exotic.
Yeah.
They've got the super sweet, like those things with the toggles on them. It's like, it's kind of awesome because it just is what it is and doesn't apologize for it.
Mm-hmm. It also sets itself up to be. There's some other interesting kind of I wonder what really inspired this, but it kind of makes sense once you look at it. It has an extra line out / tuner out mode. And apparently you can set it up to either bypass or just actually mute. Yeah.
So again, I mean, it really does seem like it's designed for how I would use it. Having this be the first thing that interacts with your guitar signal. So you put this up front, it's got a tuner out, so your tuner isn't sucking tone in any way. And you can use it as a mute if you want. And so this is generally going to be, if you're using it as a mute, this is sort of an always on kind of thing. Almost just like plugging your guitar directly into an amplifier, the same feel, but you get to add other effects after.
Yeah. I'll also say that the studio mode is based on a Pultec preamp, which is a big deal for studio heads.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot on the market in the Pultec side of the world.
You know what else this would be really great for too? Is even somebody recording direct in a studio.
Yeah, could be.
In a home studio. You just put this on the floor and run it into it, and you've got some analog feel that's talking right to your guitar. So if you don't have an interface that has a direct, like a high Z input, or even if you do, just changing the real feel of what you're plugged into.
Yeah, so we'll see again. I mean, I think this goes beyond the typical expensive boost. I mean, at $200, it's $200 for a boost is a hard bargain often, and you have to do things like, it's germanium, or you have to use the magic transistors and diodes and stuff. Or like it's hard to make the value proposition on boosts often when they're just a straight up boost, because there's so much on the market there. But this kind of differentiates itself. So I'm kind of curious what this kind of looks like and what people wind up using it for.
I gotta be honest. I'm thinking, I'd really like to try this in place of my broadcast AP.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to get as dirty as your broadcasts, but it will do the preamp.
With that though, the broadcast for the most part I run with just a tiny bit of hair on it. But I love what it does to the EQ. It's got a couple of different switches. So, it's the AP has a toggle switch for the EQ for the low cut, and so I basically just have it two different settings depending on where I want to sit in the mix. And generally, like, I'll take a bit of it. What's important about the broadcast too is that the EQ happens before the gain, and so if you hit the gain circuit with too much bass, it can really flub out on you. And so, having a toggle switch to cut the low end of a humbucker guitar so that it still stays tight and all that stuff is really great. But other than that, I just put a little bit of hair on it, and it adds this kind of sizzle that you don't get out of most drives. But it's even more an EQ thing. And with these different toggle options on this guy running into pedals, I think, that could really do the same thing. As well as just impact the overall feel, which is something that the sizzle that adds does for me as well. So, yeah, very interesting. I'm very intrigued by this.
Yeah. Other intriguing things, MXR has released the Poly Blue, which is a retake on the Blue Box Octa Fuzz that they had with some additional controls and features and adding modulation. Also offers up to 4 octaves of control, which is ridiculous. And some other kind of interesting
expression
things.
on it too.
Yeah, expression in. It's based on Jimmy Page's "Fool in the Rain" with Led Zeppelin kind of sound. I'm not a big enough Zeppelin head to remember that one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat here.
Well, here's a link to it as you scroll down. Octa Fuzz is an effect I've yet to really master, but I'm sure people are going to be all over this at $200.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Actually, so you can.
What's interesting is that it's digital, so that might throw some people off at first.
Well, there's digital controls, right? It's like it's not all digital.
Well, true. Yes. But there is you can do a monophonic versus polyphonic kind of thing, which to me kind of screams like, oh, okay, so the octave stuff has to be digital, right? And some lovers of Octa Fuzz.
There's like analog polyoctave stuff.
Got it.
Like it's like the same way like there's analog delay. It's not really analog, but it's sort of analog. Sure. In other words, there's a dedicated chip that does it, but it's not a DSP. It's like
right.
You send something into it. So the cool thing is with the expression pedal, you can actually have 2 different settings and rotate between them.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
So I could see a lot of people like octave down, octave up, octave down, octave up kind of a thing. And do that kind of a blending or all sorts of stuff. So some cool stuff. I'm curious. I need to listen to some demos on this. I haven't actually heard it yet. and see where that one turns out.
Yeah, I mean, $200 for a fuzz, not unheard of these days. Fuzz is definitely, I think, coming back.
Oh, it's been back, son.
Well, I don't. There's an argument that it never really went away, but in terms of like the boutiqueness and the sort of the flavor of the day, I think fuzz is more on everybody's radar in terms of that. What's interesting is fuzz is one of those categories, and maybe this has been my conception anyway. Fuzz is one of those categories where generally people pay a lot of respect for the original circuits.
Oh,
and if it's new, it's got to be great. Whereas with overdrive pedals, it's kind of the opposite. The tried and true stuff generally informs, the circuits that are being made today, but people aren't going back and, scouring the internet for.
There's something to be said about how many people pay ridiculous amounts of money with for like original tube screamers. So I mean,
yeah,
and technically the 80s is vintage now.
In some way because the ODRC that I picked up from Nordland is based on 1990s.
Yeah, and we talked about Klon. I mean,
studio
their stuff. It's just it's a different era. I mean, fuzzes all came out in the 80s and the 70s. Or sorry, not the 80s, in the 60s and the 70s. So it was a
even
different
companies
era.
like JHS that are putting out new fuzzes are still very strongly staying true to the roots of fuzz. But it has been interesting. Companies like Beatronics and others coming out with brand new fuzz now for some old.
Well, you know who came out with an old fuzz? We talked about it last week on the show. Gibson has revived the Maestro brand fully. And so I'm surprised by this. They teased the brand and everyone was like, oh, cool. We're going to see an FC1, which is like the original fuzz circuit or one of the original fuzz circuits. That's Satisfaction Rolling Stones. That's the sound. So Gibson has actually released an entire line, 5-hole pedals, all under the Maestro branding, which is their first, I believe. Well, not really their first pedal, but it's a dedicated brand and lineup. So you've got.
You know what I love about this most?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the lineup. We've got the Fuzztone FZM. We've got the Ranger Overdrive, the Invader Distortion, the Comet Chorus, and the Discoverer Delay. And of course, it's all, the vintage vibes and stuff. The casings look fantastic.
By the way, that's an analog delay.
Yeah. So what I love the most about this is that for a brand that is re-releasing retro, pedals like this,
mm-hmm.
they're all launching at between $150 and $160.
Yeah, they're really affordable.
How amazing is that? A lot of the retro reissues go for more money.
Yeah. Now, there's a cynic in me that says, all right, did Gibson generate this, or did they just, are they recycling somebody else's design? Are these are probably Chinese made at those price points? There's a lot of that cynicism that I think will fall on this. But interesting nonetheless to see another player in the industry, and frankly, a player with backing. I mean, you've got Gibson's distribution network, so every Guitar Center is going to have these.
Yeah. Well, if we get into some of the feature sets of these pedals, I mean, they're all pretty simple. They've got 3 knobs and a toggle on every one. But I mean, for $150 to get a distortion pedal with a built-in gate.
Yep.
Come on.
Or
at that point, it doesn't matter if it's Chinese made. It doesn't matter, whose circuit it is. I mean, for $150, you can barely get a JHS pedal for that, except for that. I mean, honestly, they're new. What's the
9 series
or
3 series? Yeah, 3 series.
Series, yeah. I mean, those are great pedals too. But yeah.
But yeah, so the other interesting part is both. They're all analog. They all have a sort of a 2-mode option. So If you go through, there's a modern and classic mode on the FZM. On the Ranger, there's a low and a high mode. On the Distortion, there's a gate on and off. Comet Chorus has an orbit and earth mode, which are two different types of chorus sounds. The Discover Delay has a modulation on and off. I know
the delay, by the way, it's the one that is more expensive. It's 160 instead of 150, but it's got internal cuts for you to mess with the modulation.
Yeah. I mean,
for $160.
How much does a carbon copy cost?
That's $99, isn't it?
Is it that cheap
these days? Well, so here. Oh no, it's up to 150 again.
Okay, so it's about the same ballpark, and that's your analog delay competitor
with modulation.
Yeah, so they're making a play here, and a convincing play. I mean, we'll see how these sound. I mean, is this a rebadged Behringer situation, or is this
I'll say this too: top mounted jacks.
Yes, top mounted jacks. Unique enclosure design.
I love it. It's like perfectly retro.
They really have a good aesthetic, and I like the 3-light LED.
The 3-light, yeah, I just noticed that too. That's the LED. That's beautiful. That is so cool. It's got 3 LEDs: a red, a yellow, and a blue on every one that lights up. Super vintage, super cool. Well, super retro, I'll say. Not vintage, but
yeah. So we'll see how these are once they hit the streets. These are a lot of announcements without demos and material and all those kind of things. So we'll see how that all turns out. Now, for what everyone is sick of talking about on the internet right now, Paul Reed Smith has come out with more guitars. So last week we talked about the Silver Sky coming out. There's a lot more to the rest of the lineup that has come out. So let's just run down here. Starting with, they have I'm going to say quote unquote new model, which is the 2408. The 2408 comes in an S2 and in an SE. That's a dual humbucker tone volume with the 408 switching system. So there's unique switching options. There's two kind of mini toggle switches between them that allow for individually splitting the pickups, which most PRS guitars kind of have an all or nothing. Yeah,
that's really intriguing to me as an owner of the CE24. I mean, we even talked about maybe doing a mod of the CE24 that would allow me to do it, because I would really love an option to be able to easily switch between a single coil at the neck and a humbucker at the bridge, depending on the song. And right now, you'd have to switch the pickups and
no, the pickups will split. You just need to redo your volume pot to become a push pull, and then you could split them individually.
Yeah, right. If I could split them individually, that would be a simple solution. Right now, I can't. And so while the CE24 has amazing sounds in it.
Well, the other thing you need to remember is there is shunt resistors get put into place when you split pickups on a PRS.
Mm-hmm.
That helps them stay the same volume.
Right.
So that's why you split both at the same time, is because that resistor comes in. It doesn't mess with your brightness of your tone caps and stuff like that. That's why.
This is why we have you, Scott.
Have you never looked at inside your guitar? Have you never took the back panel off? Never got curious?
Listen, okay, I am a curious person, so it's not like I'm generally the kind of person that's just like, if it works, it works. But honestly,
if it works, it works.
If it works, it works. That guitar just sounds good. I don't need to care too much about how it sounds good.
Fair enough. We also have Orianthi has a private stock model, which is very ornate.
Yeah.
Looks gorgeous. Good for her. When this came out, I actually went and tried to listen to some more Orianthi music, and I'm just like, she's talented. It's not for me. Anyway, of course, I feel the need to say something like that, because of course we all have to have an opinion on something. Anyway, it will not be limited, but they will close out orders on that thing. It seriously, the inlays on this thing is just this gorgeous sort of vine with flowers coming out of it as the fret dots. It's really great. And then it's got this pink to purple burst on the top that is pretty loud. So
yeah, it's very specific, but to work hard, that inlay is like breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's like this. Yeah, you just gotta look it up. There's nothing we can say, I think, to paint the picture that is this guitar. You just gotta see it.
Yeah. So they also they're coming out with a new pickup, voiced or a voiced Fishman pickup. So they have their own unique voicing on it for the SE acoustics. And I think a few new guitars, including the SE Mark Holcomb, both 6 and 7 string, and the SE Custom 24 Floyd can come with a shallow violin top carve, like Paul's guitar and the SE Custom 24. And they're coming out with new finishes for the Hollow Body 2 and the SE Paul's guitar. So I would say it's not the. I remember last year they came out with the studio model and the deluxe, so it's not as wild, but pretty cool. Some good new stuff, but it all kind of pales in comparison with last week. With, let's be honest, this is probably going to be the best selling. That was probably going to be the best selling guitar of the year, and
yeah,
everyone's going to be mad and argue about it for a while. But the truth is, people really want to buy that guitar for at least the next year or two.
Well, maybe we can do a little bit of lip services to some of the conversation we had off screen about that. I won't get into the SE Silver Sky specifically very much, but what's interesting is that I think as of late, the reputation that PRS has is that it's able to somehow compete with, the big staple brands. I mean, everybody knows PRS, but that's because it's got some really big names behind it now. If John Mayer plays it, everybody knows about it. That doesn't mean that it's as big of a company as Fender or Gibson. And so, a company making any decision to be putting out a guitar, especially with Paul, I know at this point he's still sitting comfortably. He's not fighting to get his brand out there anymore. But
yeah, like he has his distribution network. People come to him now.
Right. But you can also be sure that Fender can take a chance, and not that they are. I mean, they have in some ways with some of the crazier Mexican models and stuff, like offshore models that they put out.
Well, they had the whole Paranormal series, and also the Parallel Universe.
Their standard line, though, has for the most part stayed safe and consistent. But yeah, I mean, with Paul, I mean, you can be very sure that a lot of thought goes into any line that he puts out. Because, yeah, I mean, he's not operating at the same scale. So the fact that we're even talking about PRS as much as we are says a lot.
Yeah, I will also say there's a few guitars that I would really point to are the ones that like were big hitters for him in recent memory. So I would say like the Zach Myers was definitely one of them. And coming out with like a SE Zach Myers, that guitar sold. I'm seeing a lot of SE parlor acoustics now.
Yes.
That model has seemed to be very popular with people and just hit the right price point and everything that's out there.
Fine. Is it CME that's got that? Is it an exclusive, like shell pink almost color on that thing?
I'm unaware of that one, but
I played one and it's like $700 or something like that. And
yeah, it's pretty affordable.
It sounds good and it feels fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, there's stuff like the PRS Sound Zero was supposed to be the new Hot Rod Deluxe killer, and it hasn't really caught on. So I mean, there's failures on their parts, or I wouldn't say failures necessarily, but just like misses and things that haven't really caught on. But the other thing I would also say is we saw last year Gibsons disappeared. They couldn't get them out the door. They couldn't make them.
But yeah, and that's another thing. It's really worth talking about with PRS is that
they stayed in
Because
production.
well, yeah, and let's talk about why. They are still a smaller brand that doesn't operate at the scale of a larger company like Gibson or Fender, and they're able to do things like age their woods longer, and it really does affect the final product. And even like a couple of years like we've had, they've probably been sitting on the woods that they're using building these guitars for half a decade to a decade already. And they've already bought ahead of time for this stuff. So they're probably not hit as hard from a production standpoint.
Yeah.
They might feel it in another several years.
Well, that actually might be a bigger reality. I mean, I will just say it's just what I've noticed, at least around me. We have a Guitar Center, we have a Chicago Music Exchange. Those are kind of the two guitar stores I go to when I go to guitar stores. PRS's stock and wall presence has grown, particularly at Chicago Music Exchange, largely because Gibson's has shrunk because they can't keep Gibson's in stock.
Yeah.
And Gibson's not keeping up with the production demands. So it seems like they've really seized upon the opportunity to kind of fill in some of those gaps, and that could be a big part of it. Is people are going like, all right, I want a Les Paul, but maybe I'll get a McCarty. I don't know, or a single cut or whatever they're doing.
And if quality instrument is worth the money,
yeah,
to an extent. I will absolutely say that. And I've got a couple of PRSs, and I've got a Fender American Pro. I love all of my guitars. But it took my Fender a few years to settle into the beautiful instrument that it is now. Whereas off the rack, my PRSs have just been perfect. And, it's worth a little bit more money for what is still consistently a very high quality instrument.
Yeah. I mean, this is starting to become the PRS apologist show when Tom was on last week too, doing the same thing. So.
Yeah, well, I wanted to mention this all because we can't necessarily put this brand in the same group, even though it gets a lot of attention, again, because it's got a lot of really great artists. It's got a ton of YouTube presence too. Some of V2's top guitarists. And that's genius marketing from Paul's standpoint. But that does not reflect the size of his company. That just reflects the smartness of his brand. And so credit where credit's due here. They're putting out great instruments. And the fact that, they're just copying other guitars or whatever, hey, everybody does that. And he started where every other small brand that you still know of now started. And he's been able to turn it into something that most of those other brands haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. So let's keep plowing through here because we got too much stuff to talk about. So Vintage comes out with the Icon V65V, which is coming in at less than 500 pounds, which is crazy of a low price for what looks to me like a P90 Jazzmaster that is just relic to Kingdom Come, but at the same time, if you look at it, those relics are identical.
Oh yeah.
So it's a templated
that
relic.
may as well be stenciled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how they relic some places. Is they'll just paint over tape and then they'll rip the tape out, and so they could stencil on tape and then pull it off. Sorry, industry secrets here. It comes in two finishes, both worn in a black and a sunburst to give the guitar a pawn shop gem vibe. 22 frets, 25.5 scale lengths, soft maple C bolt on neck, alder body. They are Wilkinson Soap Bar P90s instead of Jazzmaster single coils. I believe it's a Tune-o-matic style bridge with a Jazzmaster style vibrato. I don't believe either of them are actually branded. Torque guard and Wilkinson tuning heads. Actually 429 pounds each. I mean, even if you got to pay another $100 to import this, I could see people jumping on this.
Just for the price point alone, worth checking out.
So,
Relic job at that price point. I've got to just be honest about my preconceptions here.
oh, you think it's going to play like a Squire, right?
I'm not even talking about playing. They've got to make just. I mean, money is money, right? They've got to be making some compromise somewhere. And so either
it's
they're taking some
hardware
really
and
great
pickups.
photos that are making that Relic job look better than it will look in person, or it's going to play like a Squire.
Oh, you think it's going to be like
a
the
lower
Fender
model Squire?
Was it the Fender Road Worn where they did the Relic jobs, but they were all like identical?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they were a cheaper.
But also, it's interesting to me that the Jazzmaster is the model that they choose to do this in, because, I mean, it's got to be one of those guitars that people spend the most money on modifying. Even brand new American Fenders get new hardware.
Yeah.
So.
Huh. Do you know?
Maybe it actually makes a lot of sense. If people are going to be modifying it anyway, you're getting a great looking paint job, which, let's be honest, is the hardest to modify.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to spend money upgrading the hardware anyway, as long as it's got good bones.
Yeah. So apparently, Old Town School of Folk Music is a vintage dealer, but they don't have any on their shelf right now. But yeah,
say this too. P90s seem to be good pickups to fake cheaply.
Yeah, it works. I mean, the other part you got is most people prefer a P90 and a Jazzmaster. There's a reason why there's a lot of Jazzmasters that have P90s in them, or takes on it, like the Fano, and that was a whole trend. I don't know. I guess offset guitars have kind of faded. They don't seem to be that popular, or as popular as they used to be.
Well,
Strats kind of came back in style, I would say.
Strats very much did come back in style, even just sonically. There was a really big push in like the indie pop kind of realm for Jazzmasters.
Mm-hmm.
In the last like 5 years. But yeah, I mean, Strats will always come back around, and it seems like that's been the trend lately. But yeah, I mean, if you're getting a Jazzmaster, I'd say even the P90s just make sense anyway, because they will always remain more versatile. Maybe that's a hot take, but
I mean, I play a Jazzmaster. You've played my Jazzmaster. You know how shrill they can get, and you either love it or you're like, oh, I gotta deal with it. And you see a lot of people modify Jazzmasters. It's a very popular modding platform because people generally don't like them out of the box. So
well, to be honest, just as a guitar, unless it's got I really do enjoy a well set up Jazzmaster trumpet, but that's what people spend a lot of money on, non-stock hardware for. And so, other than that, you can put P90 in a guitar. I don't need a Jazzmaster for that sound.
Yeah. Well, the other fun part is, since it's P90, it's a standard route, so now you can swap in P90 sized other stuff too. If you want. Anyway, moving on. Fender Custom Shop has introduced. Okay, it's interesting. There's only one Fender Custom Shop so far. Usually, Winter NAMM is like Fender Custom Shop, just nuts, right? Like that's usually their big release. But they've come out with a limited edition Telecaster based on Terry Kath's of Chicago. So you got a nice little Chicago Blackhawks logo on there. I'm surprised they got away with it, but I guess there's licensing, maybe. I don't know. Which he had just covered in stickers and whatnot. So there are only 50 made. I bet you they're already sold out. And they're $20,000. But, like, have you Have you seen how they do custom shops at Winter NAMM?
Mm-mm.
So they let everybody walk through, and people put their business cards in them. Like dealers put their business cards in them for the opportunity to buy it, and then they'll pick one of the business cards, and that's the person who gets to buy.
Oh my God.
And so there's a game of like, like no guitar has only one guy's business card in it. So it's always a gamble of like, what are you going to get from the Fender custom shop this year?
Right. Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy. I'm curious if, you mentioned that only one is coming out this year. That might be simply because of the.
I think that's the no NAMM effect. I think you're going to see more.
That's a good point.
You're going to see more. Speaking of a lot more, ESP launches 43 new models for 2022. Now, I guarantee you, this is not new. This is new finish options on a lot of existing guitars. But and they're adding Apertunes to a lot. So you got, first off, the Snakebite camo finish on the James Hetfield, which looks pretty dope.
Dude, I'm not a camo guy. That looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. They have the LTD Aero series editions, which are it's a V with a bottle opener shape on it.
It's a better V.
Yeah. Tunematic bridge, Fishman Fluence.
This has got to be one of the smartest releases.
Yeah.
That we're even talking about. Because this is a guitar brand, and not all of them can get away with this, but this is a guitar brand that is making the changes that people in the scene want. Fishman Fluence pickups are amazing. Evertune bridges are amazing. The finish options are fantastic. It allows a lot of variety.
And no one's stuck saying, well, if you don't build it like how you built it in 1956, it's crap.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm wildly impressed by what I'm seeing.
Yeah. You got the EC series, which is the single cut model of the Eclipse. Is our audience even into this?
They've got even additional, the Viper series has like baritone skillings added to it. Like, yeah, and honestly, yeah, we're talking about a slightly more niche kind of thing here.
I mean, these are metal guitars.
Yeah. Yep. Metal and punk. But, I mean, in that scene, something like an Evertune bridge makes a world of difference. A world of difference.
Yeah, especially, I mean, depending on how you play and like what way you play, the Evertune can be incredible.
Oh, yeah.
So, go check them
and
out.
The finishes alone.
Yeah. I mean, so there's no way we're just going to read this list and just go through it because Diaz is not here. But you can go online, look through this whole new catalog, and there's tons of new things. And also, we don't know prices and we don't know anything else. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going to be like the darling that jumps out of this. But
if you're listening, if you're inclined to check this out.
Yeah.
And if you're not.
Yeah, and a similar brand, Solar, also announced 5 new Fishman equipped electric guitars. So you've got oh god, I hate their model numbers.
If you like Ibanez, you want it to come with a Fishman.
Yeah, Fishman Fluences all throughout, multi-piece necks, locking tuners, Floyd Roses. Pretty reasonable price points too. I mean, these sit around like $1,200.
Yeah, they're more sort of the classic finishing options here. We're seeing some bursts, some, like a cream and a white. Yeah,
they're not as metal-y.
Which, honestly,
helps.
Yeah, it helps. I think, too, like, as you're seeing, I think the metal scene, and I'm one of the least qualified people to talk about this, but just from my experience anyway, it seemed like for a while there, the metal scene was like, all right, you've got to have your prerequisite number of tattoos, ear piercings, all that kind of stuff. And, a buddy of mine's in a metal band, and half these guys look like they just came straight from the office. It's, you can express yourself musically in that way without having to, not be able to get a day job or whatever. It's, which it's not to say that I believe that anybody should be discriminated against based on their tattoos or piercings or anything. Because, like, come on, it's 2022. But you know what I'm saying. Listen, it's kind of cool that you've got really, really great guitars that are in that vein. That, yeah, I mean, don't have to have that vibe if you're not looking for it.
Yeah. I mean, I would even say like Ibanez in recent years has kind of veered more into the classical aesthetic while still having all the high function too. You've seen that with like all the AZ series and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Charvel has calmed down their looks a little bit to accommodate that crowd a little bit too. So you're seeing
Soar can be used in that vein too.
Yep.
And you've definitely got more classic look.
So you've got options. I mean, there's tons of new stuff. And I mean, this is a lot of this can just be new finishes for the year and some of that. But at the same time, I would definitely say ESP embracing the Evertune is a big deal. So
Definitely. And, new finish options, I think we can all kind of like admit to being a little disappointed that might all be what a brand releases for the year. But at the same time,
that's all Fender's going to release for like the next month.
Right. And, and that's sort of just like, yeah, it's easy for them. They just change the paint color and they sell 1,000 more guitars. But at the same time, I mean, we all know that we buy guitars based on look.
Yeah. Mr. Pre-ordered a PRS based on solely it being blue.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. But yeah,
I mean, that's me. I mean, you saw me finally look at Paul Reed Smith because, well, actually, you and I weren't friends then, but like, I always ignored them. I always thought they were really loud. And then suddenly they finally came out with the Trampus Green and the CE, and I was like, ooh, hi.
That's the same for me. Like, I could never see myself getting a PRS that wasn't the Silver Sky because that look just wasn't for me. I ended up getting a really, really great color. And that made all the difference. I didn't care how good of a guitar it was. If it wasn't my vibe, I wasn't going to play it.
Yeah, and frankly, that color is no longer in production. So, for both of us, I don't think the Green Burst or the Trampus Green are still in production. So we jumped on them when we wanted to.
Yeah, it was exclusive to 2020. I remember, and it's amazing. It's the same Trampus Green, but it goes to a darker, true green kind of burst around the edges, and it's finished in green back, and I absolutely adore it.
Yeah,
and it's like the least expected guitar. Like you've seen mine. Like all the other guitars that I've owned have pretty much fallen under the same color palette, and this one's pastel. A little out there, but a more pastel color palette. Yep. Admittedly, that's my vibe, but this one, it spoke to me, but it took the right finish option. So, maybe we'll have players playing Evertunes and all these other things that never really vibed with the existing finish options and stuff. I am still really excited to see that coming out of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to knock a special color having a special meaning or like a certain one jumping out in a certain year. And it's not like Fender does a consistent, like year 1, we come out with these colors, year 2, we come out with these colors, year 3, we come out with these colors, like where we know the pattern at this time. And
honestly, I've kind of been a little disappointed at some of the bigger brands in the colors that they've picked for the fashion of the year. I don't know how that is. It's like, no, I really love that guitar, but I can't find the finish for it.
I mean, remember, they're selling the guitars that the most people will buy.
Yes.
There's a reason why there's a 3-tone sunburst in every Fender.
Exactly.
That's what people buy, myself included. How many? I have 2.
Well, definitely, exactly. So if you're trying to be an individual, it just sometimes can be a little disheartening because you're like, I love that guitar, but do I really need to compromise? Do you want to finish anything? But it makes sense. I mean, they're brands that are just trying to push guitars.
Yeah.
So
Yet at the same time, Apple has been able to sell us space gray and silver for like 20 years now. Well, I guess the whole white aesthetic of Apple has gone away. But
yeah, it has. It has to some degree. Apple is interesting in that I think in a way, Apple has been at the forefront of aesthetic.
Well, that's because everyone copies them because everyone's already buying Apples. I mean, they're the tastemakers on the aesthetic, not necessarily because they're innovating.
Exactly.
Because I mean, it's really it's a lot of Johnny Ive is. I won't say I'm not going to accuse him of being a copycat, but his inspirations are very obvious.
Yeah, well, Apple is one of those brands that does not embody form follows function.
Yeah.
Form and function are of equal priorities. And what's interesting is with guitars, we are oftentimes, I mean, you can say every guitar brand out there is derivative of designs that came out of the 50s and 60s. And so at this point, the body styles have been done. It's the colors that need to stay hip. We all know what sound we're going for, right? It's tested and true. If you like a Strat, you like a Strat. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that in 2022, I should need to be choosing between Daphne Blue and, 3-tone burst.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see what comes. I mean, I don't know what the over/under is going to be, but in the next month, we'll probably see a new color lineup from both Gibson and from Fender. Just because that's the season. This is when we transition. So we'll see what they come out with.
There you go. Speaking of new colors, I don't know if did you guys talk about the new Mark Lettieri color?
We missed that.
Make it onto the podcast?
We missed that in the PRS rundown.
Yeah. So they launched a new blue guitar that is really gorgeous.
I still think that guitar looks funny without a pickguard, but I'm so preconditioned for a Strat look. I'm so preconditioned for a Strat. But anyway, with that, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to check out more about our podcast, either we have a companion Facebook group, we have an Instagram account that Diaz posts to once in a while. All our episodes can be found on YouTube. There's also some videos that we have on YouTube periodically, and we post there. You can subscribe there. You can also
don't forget to check out Ben's pedals too at Electromotive.
Ian, you're ahead of the list. But all that can be found at theeffectsloop.com. That's your one-stop shop for everything we do on our link tree. You can also join our Patreon at $5 a month or more. You join our secluded, secretive, special, super special group of people who get the episode early. And also get to participate in the group chat where there's a direct line of contact to us, the hosts, help shape the show, see where things go. You can also check out our sponsor, Electromotive Sound Company. Definitely give Ben's pedals a look. His phasers, his fuzzes, everything he makes is good and can be tweaked. Often he'll tweak it to what you want. I don't want to oversell what he's doing, or make his life miserable, but he's got amazing stuff. So check them out.
I was excited to talk about them again.
and reach out. Hit them up on Instagram or wherever you need to find them. And you can sometimes get more out of what you're looking to do. And so with that, thanks for joining us. Ian, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And everyone have a great week. Bye-bye now. Say goodbye, Ian.
Bye.
We are strong. We have to just keep pushing. dictionary. Why is negativity always drawn out? Pictionary, visualize love. Energize lives together. We undefeated. A plan to make weathers, no gloves needed. When we weed into the mindset of achieving and believing in a community that remains savvy. Feather after, the world should be one. Hate annihilated, every heart is one. Love again. So